There we go. Thank you for attending our first webinar today. This is a series of 3 that will be presented by Rob McKinney. Rob is a pioneer of utilizing mobile construction solutions, better known by the moniker of his internet personality, the Con App Guru. He's a construction technologist that works with apps every day to better understand how they can improve workflows. He's a co-creator of the Con Tech Crew podcast and Tech You Should Try series. Rob is joining us from the mountains of Georgia, where he lives with his wife and daughter and avidly cheers on the Georgia Bulldogs. Today, Rob will be talking about how new safety technology that can assist your company. Thank you, Rob, for joining us today.
Shirley, thank you so much for the opportunity to meet with you and present some information today. Give everybody a little bit deeper background from the perspective that I'm going to come to you today. So I actually came out of the construction industry. I was a safety director for roughly 14 years with 2 different contractors in the Atlanta area. So during that time, I was really fascinated with how technology could be applied to construction and more specifically to safety. Because when I first came into the industry around 2001, I'll be very candid, it was a lot of paper-based workflows. And by that I'm talking about the safety meetings that I would lead, the safety inspections, job hazard analysis, but also across the board for the company, paper-based plans, paper-based everything. And I was wondering how technology could help better. And so towards the end of my career, really around the time that the iPhone came out and the iPad, that's when I really started thinking about how could you use technology in a different way. And so I kind of made a transition from being a safety director to this term that you hear now very frequently, construction technologist. I experimented with technology, and as I experimented and I had successes and wins, I started my blog site. That's when I started doing some public speaking. One thing led to another, and I met James Benham and had an amazing journey for 3 years traveling the country doing podcasts and different entertainment type things with the content. But at the core of a lot of what I talk about really is still trying to focus in on how could you use technology to improve safety. And I think there's a few ways we can do that. So these are the 3 learning objectives I have for you this afternoon. We're first going to talk about how can technology reduce risk on project sites. We'll talk about, number 2, how to streamline certain workflows for your project teams. The hardest part we'll talk about, and I'll try and give you some insights, is really talking about ROI. And that is return on investment for the apps, the software, the hardware that we're looking at to improve this type of performance. So I'm going to play a couple of videos and kind of zone people in. Now, this is moving a large piece of material in Atlanta. And if you're watching what's occurring here, that load did not make it to its intended destination, obviously, and there was an issue. And it makes you wonder, is there technology? Is there something that could have alerted that driver of something going on there? Or how about this one? I was actually in a hotel up in North Carolina. This was a couple of years ago. I was waking up, having coffee, checking some emails, look out the back window because I heard the sound of that cutoff saw. And so I see the employees up there on a scaffold that's slightly questionable. There's silica dust flying around. There's employees all over the place. Again, it makes me wonder, is there technology that could, make sure that the right employees operating the right piece of equipment, or that a supervisor, a professional could be alerted that there's some unsafe work happening on the job site? Now, this is one that I pulled from the web. It still makes me wonder. You're on a job site. This is in clearly a lay-down yard area. But what if something like this were to occur? Not a good day on a job site, I guarantee. But again, I'm asking, can technology help improve the safety process for what we're really looking at on job sites? And I think the answer is yes. So a few things that I want to share with you. How can we actually reduce risk? How can we improve safety with technology? Well, there's a few things that we'll talk about. The first one, mobile devices. These amazing things we have in our hands with the amazing computing power and the connections, I really think can help us because they allow us to communicate in real time. If you really think about it, these mobile apps, they're helping us generate data. This data can be analyzed. More importantly, I think we're heading to the path of data can be used to predict outcome. This data shows us patterns. If you think about it, when we're writing things down on paper, I refer to that as a carbon locker. And I spent nearly 10 years trying to manage safety through paper. And it was a laborious process, and it took time, and it was very laggy. Versus when people create reports and do inspections and they do safety digitally right now, these patterns can emerge so much quicker. There's also a fascinating place, I think, for AR and VR, and that is, I'm talking about augmented reality and virtual reality. There's a whole new world of training that is right on the edge of breaking through in this industry. And the last part, and this is where we're pushing on the edge a little bit, is AI and ML. So I'm talking about artificial intelligence at the same time of machine learning, of how that can be utilized in our space and what it can do to help us out. So how does this really work in the current real world? Well, let's talk about a few examples. So there's four things I'm going to share with you today. We're going to talk about advances in PPE, because there's some really interesting things that I'm seeing occurring in personal protective equipment. There's some wearables that we want to talk about. And I know in this industry, tracking is a purple elephant. It gets people very excited very quickly, but I think there's a place for it. There's also some interesting happening with robotics and exoskeletons. And at the end, I'll share with you a little bit about apps. So let's start off first, and let's talk about some advances in PPE. So first things first, this is a very interesting example. So Milwaukee Tool, DeWalt, Bosch, there's a few companies out there. If you're watching this video, this is showing the kickback on a rotary hammer drill. And why would that matter? Why am I showing this to you? Why are we even talking about it? Well, when we're first looking at that technology, let's think about it like this. Our power tools are smarter than they've ever been. So that was an example of a Milwaukee NBS Max. It has what they call E-clutch technology built into it. That means it's got auto stop sensing capabilities, whereas the bit is going through material and it feels and measures resistance. Before it gets to the point of kickback, it shuts down the engine into a low rev scenario and it holds it really at a 45-degree angle. Instead of it doing the full 180 where an employee could have an injury to their wrist, to their elbow, to their shoulder, it's holding it at that 45. It's also connected by Bluetooth to their one-key system where you can get some very interesting information about the tool. So our tools are getting smarter. They're actually putting microprocessors in the power tools, and they're connecting them through IoT. That there's going to be a lot of amazing things that I think we can do going forward in the future. Now, the next one. I've been really fascinated by this company, and this is from King. If you're familiar with King boots, they really started in the outdoors for hiking, for sandals, for beachwear. But they have come up with a new line of boots, a new line of shoes they call the utility system. Well, why am I showing this? Why would this matter? Well, if you're on a job site that requires steel-toe boots, if you've ever worn them, they're a little heavy. They're a little uncomfortable. Or if you're out in the elements. So they've come up with some new technology that I think is fascinating if you look at it. The biggest addition so far is they have now carbon fiber steel toe caps. They're so much lighter. The footbeds are built in a wholly different way. They're literally at the point I want to call them break-in ready the day you get them. So I got a pair of these recently. I've walked through water, through snow, through mud. They were comfortable the first day. The leather is treated and it is chemical resistant, but more importantly, that carbon fiber toe cap is very durable. It's very strong, but it's light. So if people are more comfortable about the PPE that they're issued and they're wearing, they're going to wear it because if you really think about it, personal protective equipment is that last line of defense. Now, those of you that might know me and follow me on the web, I've done a few videos about another interesting topic, and that is heated gear. Now, I'm calling you and talking to you today from Georgia, which, yes, I live in the deep south. It really doesn't get that cold here compared to a lot of other environments. But some people do have to work in what we'll call challenging and extreme environments. So I have been on job sites in New York and Chicago in the middle of the winter, 50 floors up, where it's extremely cold. I have visited Canada, where the outside elements and unconditioned spaces are extremely cold. If you really think about the productivity in the winter months when it's below freezing, it's not that good. But now there's new jackets out there. So Milwaukee, again, with DeWalt, is leading the way that they had heated gear, that these are jackets literally that are designed that had heating elements that are battery powered, they can extend that heat factor ratio for employees so they may not get so cold or even get to the hypothermia level. And if they are, well, they're able to be more comfortable. They're able to be more productive. So they have heating zones in the chest, the shoulder, and even the pockets. They help protect in those cold environments, and they actually offer this in a hoodie version, a jacket version, even a shell. If you first look at it, you might think, I'm not sure about that, Rob. For a job site, I understand. You got to try it to believe it, but there are the extracurricular side of if you like professional sports that are outside and they're cold, perhaps you're into any kind of outdoor activity or hunting. There's also personal benefits to some of this technology that might get kind of interesting if you really think about it. Now let's move into a different topic, and we're going to talk about wearables because I'm very fascinated with how these can help us in the safety world. So first, let's just talk about one of the more commonly accepted ones, the Apple Watch. I have an Apple Series 4. A couple people on the crew have the Series 5. There's also Samsung Gear. There's lots of versions of a wearable. But why would you use a consumer grade, a personal wearable in a construction environment? Well, one of the best ones that I've seen, one of the best examples, is there was an app that came out a couple of years ago called the Fall Safety app. And that app was designed if you had on the Apple Watch and you fell and you were hurt, and you could not get up and you needed some assistance. More importantly, if you were incapacitated, it had a 30-second fail switch. And if you didn't stop it in 30 seconds, this app would utilize your iPhone and contact your emergency contact. They looked at this, and by that I mean Apple. Apple looked at this and actually has incorporated that new feature in the new iOS for the Apple Watch. And there's some amazing success stories of how it works. So in my mind, I have a vision for what if all employees at some point wore a wearable that was a personal wearable, as in this Apple Watch on site. But when they're on site, they could opt in, and they are monitored for their safety because what if something bad happens? What if somebody falls? They're incapacitated. What if they have a heart attack, a stroke? What if they have heat stroke? There's a lot of weird things that can happen to employees on site. And the technology might be able to alert you sooner and faster and maybe head off an issue of that nature. So that GPS location can really help with fall monitoring, the heart rate, and even now the Series 5 actually can conduct an EKG for you that they can export the data, and a medical professional can actually read it and utilize it and see better what may have happened to an employee when they were in stress on a job site. Now, the next one I want to focus on, Kat has come up with a very interesting scenario, and this is a different type of wearable, so it kind of looks like a Fitbit, and it sort of is, but what this is measuring, what Kat is looking at, is a very different idea. So they're using biomathematical science and a cloud-based wearable. They're tracking your sleep. Well, why would they be tracking your sleep, you think? Let's study this for a little bit. They're studying sleep patterns of workers, but also measuring their work hours. So they start looking at these sleep factors of what is the quantity of your sleep, how much did you sleep, the cumulative sleep, the time zone. There's a lot of things that go into very good sleep. But the problem is if you don't sleep enough and you work too much. So what about turnaround jobs where there's quick turnaround, where you have to go in, you go out, or you work at night? If things are changing and your sleep patterns get disrupted and you don't get the rest that your body needs, but you continue to work and work and work, the studies show that your body literally starts to perform as if you are intoxicated. This is what this is measuring, is your quality of sleep versus how much you're working. And are you at the point of, you may be at the point of you could have an accident because you're just too worn out. And this proves by numbers that your body is in duress and that you need some issues. Crazy different things going on with this. Now, another one to really hone in on is what they call smart tags. And by that, it's a way that they're looking at the workers on site and they're trying to set these markers and compare that performance level and see what is happening to employees, but give them some good data about overwork, overexertion, and then that undervalued sleep factor, and try and prevent some injuries if they can do that. Now, I talked before a little bit about tracking, and this definitely is, I'll say it again, a purple elephant in our industry. But there's some amazing technology that is out there that can help out. One of the companies that I've been looking at for quite a while is called Triax, and they came out of the sports injury prevention world, And they've come up with what they call the clip. And the clip is for every employee to wear on a job site, and the highest level of what it tries to do is register and record and measure falls. If an employee falls, it alerts the system in case they need medical care. It also has some very interesting side components of tracking on the job site, of understanding where employees are working and when they should be or should not be. So what am I talking about? What if you set up different zones on a job site? Perhaps it could be for abatement, it could be for lead, it could be for demolition. Lots of things could be happening. Or what if something happens? That's where the system works with a mobile device, and you can put certain notifications out through the system. One of the biggest ones they've come up with is an evacuation mode of what if you're working in a vertical environment or horizontal, large job sites, and there's an accident, there's a fire, there's a natural disaster. So their evac tag system alerts all employees immediately that there's an issue and tells them how to get to that muster point. Fascinating technology if you think about how to utilize tracking in a very different way that most people may not have thought about. So setting up zones, understanding where employees are. They also, though, can do a self-alert from the field where if they observe a safety hazard, a safety issue, there is a way that they can push the bottom of that remote, and you can see the little bit of the green at the bottom there. They can self-report an issue that'll go to the system and notify the proper safety staff about what has occurred on a job site. Now let's talk about environmental systems. This is an interesting product that I've been watching for a couple of years, and it's called, they're pods. They're made by Pillar Technologies, and what you're seeing is one of their units, and it has magnets on the back, and it has two rubber straps where they can actually take this and attach it or suspend it on a job site. So these are actually environmental sensors. They do 8 different things at one time. They're monitoring your temperature, your humidity, VOCs, your carbon monoxide, noise, light, even respirable particulates, and air pressure. It's a fascinating thing to think about when you're putting work in place, and let's say in our case we're talking about acoustic tile, maybe we're talking about drywall. What if you were asked to put those products into unconditioned space? And by that I mean the air conditioning is not on, fully running, maybe the windows, doors are not in, schedules get compressed, people get asked to do things. How would you be able to measure and know what is going on to that material that's installed? Or even overnight, what if a pipe burst in a building and it starts flooding out? How would you know before the next morning and there's 3 feet of water in the basement? Very interesting how you can actually use this environmental sensor to protect both your employees and also your installed work in place when you're looking at it from just a little bit different angle on the side, again, of monitoring the conditions of what's going on in real time. Now, the next one I want to talk to you about is the idea of robotics and how close we're getting there, but there's some baby steps. So first, let's just talk about our workers. And let's think of them, instead of construction workers, as more, I would say, an industrial athlete. And so this is a company called Suit X, and they have designed 4 different systems that humans wear, the workers wear, to augment the body, to help take the stress off of working directly in front of them, overhead, holding things, working materials. As you can see some of these examples, when people are holding their hands up overhead, it is a very challenging task to hold and manipulate a tool or a power tool versus do the work. So they have these where it can work for the full body. They have these that'll work for just the trunk, for the chest, for the shoulders. But the idea is, how can you take the stress of holding a material while also trying to install the material? So what if you're on that scaffold and you're able now to hold your arms up, and it takes enough of the pressure off that it reduces the stress on the body? So let's really think about improving that physical performance. And you see the photo I've got over here. So if you're holding that drill overhead, how long can you hold the drill before the body starts to wear down, before it's just not as light as it should be or it used to be? So this helps improve your lifting power. It helps reduce stress on the body, both the upper body and the lower body. They make this particular company, as I mentioned, for the back, for the leg, for the shoulder. There's also a full body. They're fully adjustable so they can accommodate multiple body types and sizes. It's also breathable for the job site. So this is one level to augment the body. Again, we're starting with the exoskeletons. This is how to make it easier for employees to work, how to reduce the stress and the load on the body, and ideally prevent injuries from repetitive tasks that might break them down sooner than they really should. Now, the second one I want to talk to you about is an interesting concept. This is the zero-G arm, and this is from United Rentals. Now, it's an interesting idea. This is basically a secondary arm, a mechanical arm that you can attach. So in this case, they're showing this in the oil and gas industry where they've attached it to a support scaffold to hold and manipulate a tool. So it installs easily by mounting to the bracket. The bracket mounts to the scaffold system. Then you install the device. You also can tether it so it won't fall and it'll hold everything in place. So now instead of that employee trying to hold the tool, manipulate the tool, do the work, and hold it in very a challenging position, and by that I mean extending hands straight out and holding it. Whew, lots of different things going on there where there could be an injury to an employee. So this mounts to a rack. It attaches to a mount or to a rack or even a lift. And the idea is the tool arm is trying to make it easy to maneuver tools and hold them. It's using gravity to really assist with that heavy lift. And by that, what I'm talking about is it's trying to securely hold the tools in place and decrease that risk of possibly dropping. Now, the robotics, I'm going to show you a couple of very interesting ones. If you saw any of the news at Autodesk University last year and some of the things that have been happening in a lot of the conferences lately, this is an interesting one. This is Spot. And Spot is a robot designed and developed by Boston Dynamics. You might look at it and say, wow, there's no way that's going to come on a job site soon. But it's an interesting concept of thinking they're designing this robot currently that it will walk job sites to do photos, 360 photos, videos, laser scans. It's all trying to map a job site to do what you're looking at on that bottom left of generating data of actual field conditions. It can walk around on its own. It can go up and down stairs. It can open doors. If you kick it and knock it over, it can get back up. Maybe in the future it could carry a light amount of material. Maybe it could help with doing some different things. It could be there for security, there for protection. It's a concept that they're just getting on the edge, and you're seeing these actually now being deployed on large job sites across the U.S. in kind of a beta mode of seeing, could this actually help out? Where could this go? Now, another one, not to freak anybody out about the Terminator or where we're heading at some point, but there's actually been a robot created that can manipulate, pick up, and install sheets of drywall. Now, I know this is a little bit odd, and it might be disturbing to take a look at, but it makes you wonder about the possible future for our industry of, would we be able to produce robots like this at a mass scale that are affordable and can be put into place and replace workers? I'm not sure. But what about this coming out on a truck, a delivery truck, to help assisting moving large amounts of drywall, large amounts of CMU block, large amounts of different things to take that stress off of the human being and put it onto a machine instead, again, to improve the performance of the human body. Now, the last thing I'll share with you is some interesting things to talk about apps. Now, back in the day, and I'll just say that was 2014, this is how some companies might have conducted pre-task analysis or safety forms. You have a box on the left, which, as you see on the right, is full of lots and lots of paper. Now, how can we maybe move and digitize some of that more forward and help out just a little bit? Well, one of the first ones we could talk about is SDS management, and those I am talking about is your safety data sheets. You might remember them as being called material safety data sheets, but what are we talking about? Well, what about an app? In this case, this one's called BinderWorks, and it is a way that you can send all of your safety data sheets to a mobile platform that's accessed on a mobile device through the web, where you have all of the materials, the chemicals that employees are working with where they can find and search easy. It also has a complete database of all the other companies using this technology, where if an employee is exposed to something you don't know what it is, they might be able to look it up quicker and faster. It also even has an option that if you work with certain materials that you have to put into a secondary container, it can do a custom label for you to put on that secondary container. Now, next one let's talk about 360 video documentation. This is becoming a bigger and bigger topic in our industry. By that I mean we're using these cameras, these mobile devices, these 360 cameras in very new ways. So this is a product called Visual Vocal. And think about if you have the ability to take out your mobile device and record a panoramic 360 video to document an issue. In this case, it's a shop foreman walking the shop and finding some issues. Now, what it does is it lets you go in, as you can see, and mark up and put an annotation on top of said 360 video and share it with your team members about a missing item, a condition, something of that nature that fundamentally changes your workflow. So it's reality capture of hazards. It's mobile-based. It allows those real-time markups. More importantly, it's helping to increase awareness. But let's think it through one more step. If you've created a bunch of videos about hazards or about better ways to do things, what if you could now take that technology and use it to train your employees? So they have a methodology where you could create the video, and they call them VVs. But now if you use the headset, and this works smartphones for Android and for iOS, an instructor can lead a class using their own phones through their technology and go through, let's say, a site safety orientation or an orientation of a particular new tool, a new product. This is virtual-based training that can be delivered in person or even in remote areas where everybody, you see all the different colors on the line, everyone's in there now looking at this ladder safety issue by a door. Virtual-based training to train new employees into our industry and also even retrain other employees coming into the space. Fascinating way of doing this training for people. Now, the next one we'll talk about is just doing simple documentation, conducting inspections, documenting your safety meetings, logging hazards, logging observations. Instead of using paper, I would challenge and push forward, why don't we look at a new piece of technology? In this case, this is a product that I'm doing some work with called SafeSite. And it's a mobile-based tool that lets you go in and create things such as, let's say it's an observation. You can mark it safe. You can mark it as a risk. You can set up the companies, and the idea is that instead of writing things down on paper, we're doing this digitally. It creates data instantly that can be shared with the office, with your project team, with your contractors you work with, the owners you work for, and everyone has this data about safety that you can utilize in a very new way to try and improve safety and reduce those risk factors. So it's a web-based tool. At the highest level, they're trying to actually create risk scoring. They have a new module that they're actually trying to review photos for hazards and find them. And all this is actually feeding their artificial intelligence engine that's trying to predict the future. It's trying to show outcomes that might occur based on the information that users are putting in the system. Now, finishing off, a couple of things I want to throw out there. Let's talk about VR for visualizing hazards. Again, VR is virtual reality. That means you are using a headset and a gaming engine. And this is an example from the ASSE. That's the American Society of Safety Engineers. This module was designed to teach employees how to get on a rooftop and select the proper fall protection. And so you're in a game environment where you're literally looking through and you can see it's talking about that body belt, the chest harness, the full body harness. You're picking which one is right or wrong, and you can see as they're pulling to the harness, the full body harness, it's the one that turns green to indicate that's correct. Then it walks you through how to inspect it, how to put it on. We're going past from those amazing VHS videos you might have used in the 80s, the DVDs in the 90s. We're now gamifying training for a whole new generation of workers to show them a very different way of how to actually utilize this fall protection. So it's an immersive experience. You're using an avatar and you're actually participating digitally in a very new way because you're actually doing hazard training and developing that mental muscle memory through your brain to increase that awareness in a whole new way that you haven't been able to before. So taking it one step further, this is a fascinating use case of AR, so augmented reality. This is a video called No Plans, No Problem, and this was developed by a drywall contractor out of the Los Angeles area, Mark Brothers. I'm not sure if you've seen this one before or not, but I think it's a fascinating use case where they took the plans digitize them, and put them into a HoloLens. And so you can see here's one of their lead foremen. He has on the HoloLens. They have all the plans basically put into this system. And the challenge was, could an employee build a bath pod module with no physical blueprints, no paper-based plans? Everything he's building is in that Microsoft HoloLens on his head. This is kind of the future, I think, where we're headed, of spatial computing and computers. And I'll move it forward a little bit so you can see some more of it instead of the interview. It's a fascinating concept of how they can actually utilize that technology in real time to see things that are digitally there, but not physically there. Fascinating world of what some of this technology can do. So, it's not your average workload by any stretch. And what it's really talking about doing is visualizing that work before you're going to install it. It's going to let you preview some work hazards. More importantly, you can actually document and coordinate issues in real time. Very interesting way of doing things. So thank you so much for joining me today for my thoughts on how to utilize technology to improve safety on project sites. Hopefully this was some information you might not have seen before and give you a new way of thinking about things. And I'll open it up now, Shirley, to any questions and answers if anyone has anything they'd like to talk about. And I'll also put up my contact information. If you'd ever like to talk to me more, there's my email address for the company that I'm doing work for currently, my cell phone number, and the hashtags and their websites. But let's go back. Questions and answers. Shirley, did anybody have anything they put up in the chat box or anything that somebody would like to ask now?
Thank you, Rob. It's Liz. Shirley has stepped out for a moment, and I'd be willing to take any questions that we have. We don't have a huge number of callers on the line, so if anybody does have a question, I encourage you to just unmute yourself and shout it out for us.
Everybody's overloaded with the information.
Joining the meeting.
Come on. Somebody there?
Rob, we had talked about maybe, I know you've given similar presentations. Do you have any questions that do typically get asked that you might be able to address?
Yeah, when we talk about the mobile apps, sometimes people ask me, what's the best place to start? And I encourage companies that are exploring their technology and looking to start off things or maybe revamp their program is creating a technology committee. And safety would obviously want to be a part of that. So if you have a site safety director or safety coordinator or risk manager, that person would obviously, you would want them on this committee. But you want to create a diverse committee of executives, management, people from the field. Do you want people that have been in the industry a long time, people that have not been in the industry a long time, people that like technology, people that do not like technology? Ideally, you would meet once a month and kind of come up with the vision you have. What is it that you think you want technology to do to help you? And how are you going to get there? And I encourage people to, meet at least monthly and develop your goals and then come up with your system of how you're going to implement said goals and track and monitor them. But if you're looking to kind of start your technology journey, get that technology committee set up inside your company to look at multiple types of technology for the company. Safety is a great one to start with, but you can also look at your project documentation, BIM, lots of different ways you could go. Anybody else got a question? I'll put my contact info back up in case anybody would like to reach out to me. But everybody must be nervous to ask a question publicly. So if you want to email me one or email Liz and she can send it to me, you can always handle it that way without a doubt. Anything else coming through the chat box?
I have a question.
Good deal. How can I help you?
Robert, do you know if any of these companies that you showcased today are going to be at Intex or be exhibiting at this year's trade show?
I do not. That's a good question. I'm not sure who all would possibly be there. If you need contact info for any of them, if you want to reach out to me, if you got a particular one too you would like to learn more about, I'd be happy to try and connect you with them if I can.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Anybody else have a question? Everybody's quiet today. Well, if you'd like to email me one, feel free, or you can text me a question. Always looking to help spread more information about technology and safety. Liz, see anything else coming through the system?
There is not, but I did want to remind folks that this presentation has been recorded, so if you liked what you saw, or excuse me, if you liked what you saw and heard, this will be made available as a link, and we can pass it on to other folks we think might be benefited by this information.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you so much,
I guess
Robert.
we'll wrap it up.
Have a wonderful day. Yep, thank you so much. Everyone enjoy your day. We really appreciate it. All right.
Thank you so much. Everybody have a great day.
Okay. Bye-bye.
It could be.